Well, so a bird can't fly around a fixed structure. Like, I don't see birds smashing in the trees all the time, right? But they're able to navigate around giant blades spinning in the sky. Right?
A razor blade that could turn them into dinner in a second.
Right.
They seem to figure out how to get around.
Right, that's no problem. Welcome, everybody, to the Financial Guys Podcast. Thanks for joining us again. We appreciate it. And if you are listening in on Tuesday or Wednesday, just know that this podcast also comes out in video form on Thursdays on YouTube. So make sure you follow us there. And, of course, if you're following us there and you're watching us there for the first time on Thursday, this was great on Tuesday. I'm just saying. You should listen to both. No, I'm just kidding. If you do like it, though, do us a favor. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe below, and that helps us tremendously to gain followers and continue to spread the conservative message, because really conservatives are getting wiped off of basically every platform. And the social media, by the way, I'm Glenn Wiggle, Mike Lomas. We are the Financial Guys. We talk a lot about where politics meets money and money meets politics. But we're going to talk a little about propaganda for a second here, because I just am shocked at really how far the left is willing to. They just don't care. It's right in your face now, right? Twitter's out there this week saying anything against the vaccines, we'll take it right off. We'll label it, right? They're labeling election fraud. They're labeling this or labeling that. But Democrats can put whatever they want out, complete lies.
Well, Trump nailed it the other day at CPAC. He said, I think the Republicans outweigh the Democrats when it comes to business owners, yet we don't stand up to ourselves. And I will say that we have very proudly stood up for ourselves for the last 20 years and have said we are only looking to work with people that think like us. More Republicans need to do that. I mean, how many Democrats, how many Republicans own restaurants? And I guarantee that when things are back open at 100%, they will be all over people like Mark Polansky saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you came into my restaurant."
Oh, yeah.
There would not be a chance in hell, if we owned a restaurant, that he would not be escorted out of that place.
Right.
The second he stepped his foot inside it. Right.
Well, that's a great point.
They don't have a backbone.
That's exactly what should happen, by the way. That's a great point. For everybody who lost their business in Western New York, for all those restaurants that have been, and now we know it was all Governor Cuomo, right? Mr. Bully. We'll talk about him, but all Governor Cuomo, retribution, Mark Polansky. Remember the movie Christmas Story, right? You're either a bully, a toady, or one of the rabblous nameless victims, right? Or the ramble. Right, whatever the phrase is, but that's basically Mark Polansky is a toady, right? He is just that toady that's licking the boots of the bully so that he himself doesn't get bullied, right? That's Mark Polansky, right? No backbone whatsoever. But for him to not defend and to stand up for Western New York restaurants, in fact, to carry the nasty sewage water of Governor Cuomo, I'll call it, and direct his health inspectors, not only just paying them ridiculous amounts of money, ridiculous overtime, allowing them to order pork chops and caviar, for God's sakes, when they're on taxpayer dollars, but to not defend and try to stand up for the very businesses that pay your salary. You're right, Mike. Every restaurateur in Western New York, if he walks in the door, should say, "Get out. You are not welcome here." Just like Maxine Waters, right? It's time to play with the same fire, I think. Right?
Him, Timmy Kennedy, every single one of them. Get out. Get out. We've had enough of your garbage. Get out. You're not welcome here, right? If you're an ice hockey rink, there would not be one. If we owned an ice hockey rink,
get out.
There would be his picture on the door that says, "Get out. Get out." It was acceptable for you to play with your mates, but not my establishment, to be able to make money with these, kids. And that's, primarily where they make money with their youth hockey, right? Yep. If I'm a golf course, get together, support Arrowhead, right? And all they've gone through. If I'm a banquet facility, make sure, look at how many people can you change the voting, or maybe get involved to vote next time around if you're spreading and sharing your message of what you went through. But they don't. They just don't. None of them have any stones. I mean, they watched their industry just get crushed, and they just sat there and watched it go bye-bye. It's amazing.
Well, the polling numbers, Mike, when they did a study on this, here's maybe a partial answer as to why, at least on a national basis. What they found was that when corporations come out, like Nike, and they come out for the wokeness culture, right? it doesn't necessarily hurt their business because conservatives are too busy actually running their companies and paying the taxes for everybody else, right? So it doesn't affect conservatives as much, right? Conservatives will still go to Walt Disney World, even though Disney clearly has a left-wing agenda, right? They got rid of they canceled that one lady, but yet they have, people on there that have put, that they hired back that have the most vile stuff on the web, right? The double standard. But when it comes the other way, what they found was that when a right-wing company comes out, like a MyPillow or a company that supports the right-wing causes, you'll get canceled by half of the left. So what they say is if the country split 50-50, you'll lose 50% of the 50%. So you'll lose 25% of potential business. For our business, thank goodness, we basically kissed that goodbye 20 years ago. We said it, like, we don't want your 25%, right?
Well,
that you keep your money, you go find a liberal financial advisor. Good luck with that, right? Maybe in D.C. you can find one. I don't know.
I think that's the point, Glenn, is that if you're going to be on the right and take a stance, right? Like the MyPillow guy, what he needs to do is come out and say, I don't want your business. The MyPillow guy needs to say, I don't want your business. I'm only looking for conservatives. And those conservatives will rally around him and support it, right? That's what they've done with us. It's funny because you've said this a bunch of times on Twitter and on Facebook when somebody, some liberal troll will sneak in. And the minute we think, well, maybe we should get involved, our listeners, our supporters get in and just bury the person, right? So we don't even need to get it. So like the point is that, you don't hide from it, you go at it. And I think if you go at it, you will get the support. If the MyPillow guy said, I'm looking to sell these pillows to conservatives, they think like me, I think I'd be more likely to buy an extra pillow. Like, now's the time. That's where I'm going to buy a pillow, right? So I do think they need to take the next step, which is start to take a little bit of the playbook from the left, which is, if you're going to try to destroy my business, I'm not going to try to destroy your business, but I'm only going to work with people, and I am going to market to people that think like me, and that needs to happen more and more. We own more businesses, right? That's why they went after. That's why they went after the restaurants. That's why they went after the salons. They were easy targets. They were mainly conservatives that own those middle-sized companies, and they don't get the government handouts. If you ask, Russell Salvatore how many government handouts he's gotten, I would say probably very few to none. I'm sure he's paid a record amount of taxes, just like you and I have.
Yep. The IRS, this I said this a long time ago, Mike, the shutting down of businesses and the lockdowns and destroying of small companies, that was the IRS 2.0. Remember the IRS scandal, right? Obama used the IRS to target conservative groups, Tea Party groups that were, 501c3 non-for-profits that were trying to raise money and, super PACs and stuff like that, charitable type of things. They used the IRS to not only go after those types of organizations, they used the IRS to go after individuals, folks. Think about how scary that is. We had a government apparatus, led by Obama, who used one of the most powerful agencies in the country, really probably the most powerful agency in the country, right? Because they can seize your assets. You don't get due process, by the way, with the IRS. Did you know that, folks? We have a Constitution that clearly says you are innocent until proven guilty, right? There's in the Bill of Rights, you have due process to prove your innocence. You don't get that with the IRS. You are guilty. You are automatically guilty. When you go to tax court, it's the only court where you have to prove your innocence, right? You go into tax court, you are assumed guilty. You have to prove to the judge that you have enough documents to prove your innocence in the eyes of the IRS. So the most powerful agency in the country, given that, right? They can seize your assets, take your home, garnish your wages, right? Do whatever. They can jail you even, right? So the most powerful, he used that agency to go after individuals that he didn't like. That's a scary proposition. Now he's using the FBI to do the same thing.
Yeah, to go after individuals and then, we didn't find anything here, no big deal.
Right.
Or which is more likely because they gave, I think it was 100 different tax advisors the same tax return. They came up with 100 different answers.
Right.
There is always going to be some kind of little conflict in everybody's return that could go either way, right?
Sure.
There's so much gray area in the tax return, but to use that as a bludgeon, I'll tell you this: there's nothing better. And I know we'll talk more about it, but the hopeful bye-bye of Andrew Cuomo, because there's no doubt in my mind that he would use the state taxation code to go after the people that didn't agree with him and didn't like him. So that was absolutely going to be a baseball bat that he was going to pull out of his back pocket in the next few months. Specifically, obviously, because they're broke, right? So you need money. Let's go target the very people. Some of them, and this has already happened, where you're starting to see, tax advisors go after, not tax advisors, state tax collectors go after some of the restaurants. You didn't pay your fair share. Like, they just don't stop with these people.
No, they don't. They don't. They don't want to stop. They don't stop, but they just continue to push ahead and punish those that are against them. And unfortunately, it's in our reality, I mean, it seems like they're punishing everybody. I don't care if you are a supporter of Biden. You're getting punished, right? You're paying. Look, I went by a pump the other day. Gas prices are now fast approaching $3 a gallon. $3 a gallon. Who does that hurt?
Everybody but the major shareholders of a very select few publicly traded companies, right?
Yep.
So Walmart's ending up better. Apple's ending up better. Microsoft's ending up better. Warren Buffett is ending up better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who's going to be carrying? So the pipeline goes away, right? Who's going to be carrying the fuel back and forth? Well, that's Warren Buffett and his buddies, right? So, so there's a select few group of folks that are in the inner circle that seem to walk away with. And to your point, Glenn, Warren Buffett doesn't give a shit whether the gas is $20 a gallon or $3 a gallon, right?
That's
I mean, his stock portfolio moves up by 1/4 of an eighth of a 1%.
Yep.
And there's $500 million there. I mean, the digits are unreal, right?
Well, the left does a great job with propaganda, right? They know how to spin propaganda. So the tax cuts from President Trump were all for the rich. It was just to benefit the billionaires and millionaires in the country. And reality of it is, when you look at the actual results. Now, would I have liked more personal income tax cuts? Of course, right? We talked about that. But what were the results, though? But what were the results, though? What were the results of President Trump's tax cuts, and President Bush's, for that matter? But what were the results, right? All boats were lifted. All tides rose for everybody. I don't care if you were black, brown, didn't matter, right? Everybody did better. Everybody. We had record low unemployment rates for those ethnic groups.
Yeah, the corporate tax rate cuts were huge, right? Yeah. I mean, what was amazing is there was a number of Democrats that agreed with that. They saw that we were very uncompetitive and that we were getting zero instead of getting something. Right. And those tax cuts now got us something. You had 12,000 manufacturing companies in the process, some of them small, 2, 3-man shops, 5-man shops, but relocating back to the United States of America. And we'll see where that all goes. They haven't changed that yet. And, I'm hoping that some of this stuff gets caught up. You're already seeing minimum wage get caught up a little bit. But, they ran on the platform of increasing, the very tax cuts, the corporate tax cuts that brought all these manufacturing jobs back here. Again, what will happen? The gap. I warned people from day one. I said, you better be careful. We had a few people that wanted to get out of the stock market. I said, you better be careful and really understand and analyze what's happening right now, because in the short term, you're having probably the biggest gap between the rich and the poor that we're ever going to see. That shift, which has been happening for decades, it narrowed underneath Trump, but widened under Obama, and it'll widen here, right? By the way, everybody's not poor in California. There's some very, very, very wealthy people in California. Yep. There also happens to be about 17% of the population that's poor, living off the streets. Yeah, right?
Living on the streets.
So how is it that you've got 17% of the population that's poor, but yet you've got the top 1% of 1% of 1%ers that are there? Well, they're making the money off of somebody, right? Yeah. Right? I mean, there's the gap between. So, and by the way, when I say the rich will get richer, in America, the average age of the average balance, by the way, in a 401k, this blows my mind, in people 70 years old is something like $150,000. So I want you to think about that for our viewers out there that are also financial clients that may have 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. When the government's talking about the quote wealthy, you think Warren Buffett, you think Bill Gates.
That's right.
No, what they're thinking about is the person who's got $500,000-$600,000 in a 401k plan. That's you right. are deemed, well, statistically, you are way ahead of the average. So you are part of that. Now, if your 401k plan doubles over a 5-year period because the market does better than average, where it might normally double every, let's say, 7 or 10 or 7 to 10 years, now let's say it doubles in 5, your 500 goes to $1 million. But guess what? the 17% poor population living on the streets in California goes to 20%. That's where it goes.
Yeah, zero goes to zero, right? It doesn't matter what rate of return you're going to get. If you have no investments in the market, if you have no wealth that you've been able to accumulate because you're living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you are living on the streets, sadly, which is the case of California. Interestingly enough, Mike, again, how is that not a handout to Warren Buffett, right? You just killed the Keystone Pipeline. You sacrificed 75,000 good-paying jobs for your buddy Warren so he could truck more and rail car more oil from Canada down. You pissed off our Canadian neighbors. You pissed off unions. But you know what? You're going to get that big, fat campaign check from Warren Buffett, right? So tell me again how the Democrats don't kowtow to the rich but help the poor, because again, to your point, it gets wider, the gap does.
By the way, and there's a very easy opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to work together on the environment to get some of this stuff done. And I know this sounds very simple, and I'm sure some people on the conservative side would make fun of me for it, but that's okay. It's called trees. It's called trees. It's called trees. Honest to God, it's called trees. And if you drive around Jupiter, Florida, where our office is, has done a very good job of working together hand in hand with development and keeping the environment and the things that are beautiful in place.
Right.
You know who and I'll tell you how they do it, right? Jupiter, Florida says, look at Walmart. We know you're coming in. We know we're not going to fight you. We know you're going to need a specific amount of space. But you know what? We just want to keep this area lush and green. So if you could do me a favor, put your parking lot in the back instead of the front and plant a certain amount of trees to be able to protect our environment, right? So things are beautiful. Things are kept lush. Guess what? Trees, give off oxygen. They help clean the environment. It's a win-win for everybody. And from a development standpoint, Walmart says, are you kidding me? That's all you want is trees? Yeah, no problem, right? I mean, you can do things like the pipeline, and you can do it in a very respectful manner where you say, look, we're going to do the pipeline. We know you guys want to get it through. Can we plant a certain amount of trees to sort of offset some of this stuff? Right. And to me, by the way, the places that are the most disgusting in the country are run by liberal Democrats, right? Yeah. So I'll give you an example. South Buffalo, where my grandmother lives. I drive down the streets there. There's not one tree. When I grew up as a kid, I drove around South Buffalo, and everybody had that one or two trees in their front yard. Yep. And you drive down these streets, and it was this beautiful canopy. And it was just like, it really hid even some of the homes where the people didn't keep up with their stuff, right? Good for the environment, good for the lush area. Why is it that the Democrat areas look like shit? Well, why is it that they're the ones where the tree falls over? They're not the ones planting it, but yet Mike Lomas, when trees fall over, I plant 2 for 1. Right. And I'm the nasty environmental killer. Right?
Because I'll tell you why. Because they expect somebody else to do it for them. That's why.
They expect somebody else to do it.
Because Democrats will sit on their hands and say, well, we should really plant more trees. Who's going to do that, right? They can never figure. We better form a commission to study that. I tell you the other thing, Mike, about those communities run by Democrats is they never tear all the old crap down. Right? No. So you get rat-infested strip plazas that have been vacant for years. You get dilapidated. Yep. Look at the M&A's building. Look at that. The heart of downtown on Main Street, and it's still It's still a crumbling. It'll basically just collapse under its own weight at some point for us to be able to rebuild it.
We never got to this, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, I brought an article for you because it just changed ownership one more time.
Again.
So we have. So for those of you that have followed our career, we've been on radio for over 20 years. And one of the funny things is every so many months we talk about an article that is finally going to redevelop the AM&A's building. The biggest one was about 7 or 8 years ago where there was a Chinese company that was coming in and they were going to put like a pool on the top and all this stuff. And so that went bye-bye. Now we're under another round of ownership. By the way, every time this happens, the project becomes more and more difficult to do because more and more shit gets broken inside it, right? More of it gets destroyed. I'm sure there's drug addicts that are sneaking in there. Yep. I'm sure it's, every year that you don't maintain a building, it's just more expensive to do that. So now it's under new ownership. I'm sure 20 years from now, if God graces us with the ability to be here, that we'll still be talking about the AM&A's building that's not developed yet.
Yep, just like the Peace Bridge, right? Now there's money. Here's the best part, right? They're about to pass a $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. We'll get to that in a little bit. But part of that, if it passes the Senate, right? It's passed the House. I don't think it's gone through the Senate yet, but it's going to give people $1,400, not $2,000. But there's money in it for Chuck Schumer to build a brand new bridge from New York to Canada, right? Now, I don't know where they're planning on building this bridge. I would think logically Western New York would be the spot to put it. That's where the most traffic is going over to Canada, right? We have crumbling bridges. We have a Rainbow Bridge, a Queen St. Lewiston Bridge, and the Peace Bridge. Honest to God, folks, again, for those that have been following our career for the last 20-some-odd years, we have been talking about the Peace Bridge since our very first show in 1999. For 23 years on the radio, we've been talking about the Peace Bridge. It's going to fall over, right? Now, mind you, they did a whole spread in the Buffalo News. They had a contest. They had designers from all over the world submit their designs because we were going to select the signature bridge, and we went back and forth between twin span and signature span and beautiful. They finally, everybody voted. They picked their designer. It was some guy from God only knows where, and they're going to build this bridge, but wait a minute. The environmentalists got involved. The Arctic turned, right? God forbid a bird figure out how to fly around a fixed structure. This super span is going to be way too high, right? That was before the 500-foot windmills that are not so let me get this straight.
Though, by the way,
that's amazing.
They won't
so
care.
wait a minute now.
Care,
so an Arctic,
they'll double down on that.
Of course. So a bird can't fly around a fixed structure. Like I don't see birds smashing in the trees all the time, right? But they're able to navigate around giant blades spinning in the sky. Right?
A razor blade that could turn them into dinner in a second.
Right.
They seem to figure out how to get around.
Right.
Yeah.
That's no problem. They're literally, folks, they're talking about putting windmills 500 feet high all over Lake Erie, right? All over Lake Erie.
Yeah, right in the middle, right? Like these birds don't fly back and forth. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, that's no problem for the Arctic tern, but now we still have the same crumbling Peace Bridge, is my point, right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what an opportunity, and this is really sad, had we embraced this bridge, right? Now, Canada is shut down right now. You can't get back and forth unless you're an essential, quote, worker. Even if you own property over there, you're not allowed over.
It's ridiculous.
But at some point, you would think this stuff would go away. It seems like we've vaccinated about a third of the country already. It seems like one-third of everybody I know has had COVID already. So we've got to be pretty close to herd immunity.
Well, Johnson & Johnson is they got approved this week too. So there's another vaccine out hitting the market.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're vaccinating millions of people every day, right? So you'd think at some point we're going to get back to normal. Now, I'll tell you the opportunity here. Canada is freaking crazy. Trudeau is a nut job. Yep. He is actually locking people in their house.
Yep.
When these people finally get the opportunity, when these people finally get the opportunity to leave and go do something, they are going to run from Canada as fast as possible. I'm not saying they're moving away from Canada. People love Canada. I love Canada. There's a lot of beautiful. But I will say this. There was an unbelievable opportunity for us to save things like the Galleria Mall. And part of that is making it as easy as possible for people to be able to go back and forth, right? The Galleria Mall, every time I've been there, 33 to 50% of the people are Canadian, right? When this thing opens, you want to have that always, the ease of doing business. And if that means that we can make that bridge wider to make it easier for them to come over and spend their money, that's what competition's all about. And that allows us, Buffalo, New York, to be able to expand, maybe redevelop some of these buildings, right? We have money now coming in from Boston. They redid the Seneca Tower. The same guy bought the building, the Statler building that Mark Croce was trying to redevelop. He's got not anything against Mark. Mark was I didn't know Mark personally. We interviewed him a few times, but he didn't have the money behind him that this guy does, right? This guy's coming in and saying, I'm going to redo the entire Statler. Yeah. The way that survives because of the stupidity out of freaking New York State is we sell stuff to Canada. 90% of Canadians are located within an hour drive of Buffalo, New York. Yeah. That should be a no-brainer for us to make money. Literally. We've got an entire freaking country. That's not a lie. 90% of Canadians live within an hour ride of Buffalo, New York. There is no freaking reason that we're not just slammed.
Well, there's a reason.
Business.
There is a reason.
Yeah. Well,
liberals.
It's
liberals.
Socialism. Yeah. Liberalism. Yeah.
That's the reason.
But that's sad. It's really, truly sad. And a bridge is a bigger deal than people think. When it's easier, when you find out that, wait a minute, it only takes me 5 minutes to get over this bridge. Why am I letting that be a barrier to do business, right?
because of the Arctic
Unfortunately,
turn. Because they always listen to
get the shit together to get that done. This won't happen either. You can put in freaking $80 trillion for a bridge, and they won't be able to figure it out. They just won't. They just can't.
They won't build anything.
It'll be study after study. It'll be 20 years from now.
Yeah, that money will go nowhere. It'll go to his friends and family. It'll go nowhere. There'll never be a bridge built.
It'll only get fixed when somebody gets hurt and a truck falls into the fucking.
Yeah, when it collapses. When it collapses. When it absolutely collapses.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned California before, and just to circle back, to not to use a Jen Psaki term, but we talk about the places that have the narrowest gap between the rich and the poor, the places where even the poor are doing better than the middle class in some cases, like places like Florida and Texas, right? Yeah. You're middle class in California, if there's a one left there, you're struggling, right? But you look at the gap. You mentioned the gap between the rich and the poor in California being the widest. Did you know that the gap in California between the rich and the poor is about 8.4 times? Okay, that's a pretty wide gap. But did you know that in China, right? So we want to go towards socialist communist China. That's in the eyes of the liberals. That's what we should do, right?
That's the beacon of hope.
That's the beacon of hope, right? We want to get to communism. When they talk about equity, folks, that's what they're talking about, right? Yep. It's in China, the gap between the rich and the poor is even wider. It's over 10 times, right? Mm-hmm. So you have uber wealthy like Jack Ma, who's only been seen once, by the way, since October. So don't cross the Chinese, and then peasants basically is what you have in China, right? You don't really have a middle class there, right? And that's exactly where you go. You go across the country, and that's exactly where you see, California, and you see other, countries, right? So, you go from, New York, Florida. You look at places that are free, Florida, Texas. Then you look at New York and California. Then you look at China and Russia, right? And you say, okay, and it just continues. It's right down the same progressive line. It's a joke.
Yep. Real easy, by the way. Give businesses reasons to make money, right? I'm not saying they pay no taxes, but make sure the tax rates are reasonable. Do what Florida did, which was limit the welfare, right?
Yeah,
I think the max on welfare in the state of Florida is $1,400 a month, right?
Something like that.
And then support the police officers, right? And you say, what does that have to do? What does that have to do with money? Well, it's got law and order, number one, but number two, in places like New York, I can collect $2-3 grand a month in welfare, and I can offset my difference with selling crack cocaine on the streets. Yeah. And now there's no bail reform. I can just walk.
There's no bail. You get right back out. Yeah. There's no consequences whatsoever.
So contrast that with the state of Florida that says, look, we're going to give you a minimal amount of money every month for welfare. We're going to drug test you if you want it. And, oh, by the way, we're going to support our police officers. So if you get pulled over with, 4 pounds of heroin in your back seat, you are going to go to jail. We are going to prosecute you, right? What does that do? It doesn't make everybody clean. I'm not saying there's not drugs down in Florida and all that stuff, but what it does do is there's consequences for your actions, and it starts to get people to say, wait a minute, maybe I should take an alternative route. Maybe I should learn something different, like how to be a welder or an electrician or a plumber, right? The free handouts aren't there. In New York, they are pushing people towards it. Think about people towards it. There's an incentive to sign up.
Well, think about the law, no consequences, right? So in places like New York, just 2 weeks ago, folks, the BLM, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa, both domestic terrorist organizations. I'm not going to take no for an answer on that one. I don't care what anybody says. These are anarchist type of organizations, right? Just a couple weeks ago, they were back in New York City smashing windows, right? They threw patrons out of a restaurant. They destroyed the restaurant, overturned tables, terrorized the people in there, right? About 100 to 150 Antifa folks, right? No consequences in New York, right? So they're going to continue to do this in New York. Now, Florida, right? Governor DeSantis came out and said, okay, all right, you block traffic on 95. They did it one time. One time these clowns blocked I-95. DeSantis comes out and says, hey, all right, how about this? If you're going to block traffic and disrupt interstate, in-state or interstate commerce, right? If you're going to block people and upset their lives, if they fear for their lives because you guys are getting violent and they run you over when they're fleeing the scene, guess what? No consequences for them. Consequences for you when you end up in the hospital. They'll be shielded from liability, right? So you can now run over protesters that block traffic. That was number one. Number two, right? They continued to loot in certain places like Miami. The Miami Police Department showed up and gave these looters a beatdown. I don't know what else you would call it, but they gave them a beatdown, right? As they should have, right? And guess what Ron DeSantis did? That's right. Ron DeSantis stepped up. Governor DeSantis said, you know what? I'm not going to go after my police officers. I'm not going to talk down to them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to back them up. I'm going to give them assistance. I'm going to tell the residents that they can now shoot looters if they're looting you or your neighbor's business or home. Okay, guess how many lootings we've had since that point in time?
None.
Zero, right? Still happening in San Francisco. Still happening in L.A. Still happening in New York.
Portland.
Still happening in Portland, right?
I don't know what's left in Portland, by the way. It seems like
how is there anything left? I got to go there and see this. I got to go out there and just to see. Honest to God, I mean, I just want to drive through like with a camera and a drone footage just to see what's left out there. And the thing is, the sad part is that the police officers just sit there now and they say, "Wow, look at this." They found the guy who pepper sprayed. They claim the Capitol police officer who died. The Capitol police officer sadly died, had nothing to do with the protest. Let's be honest, right? He himself said, yeah, I got pepper sprayed, but I feel fine. People get pepper sprayed all the time, okay? If he had something else that was a pre-existing condition that caused him to die, you can't necessarily say it was the pepper spray, right? That's kind of ridiculous. But in Portland, we've had people blinded. We've had officers, lose their eyesight in certain cases, right? Due to the lasers. We've had people injured from explosives. We had a guy who got his head kicked in. A conservative guy was dragged out of his car and beaten to death, right, in Portland. Peaceful protest. The gaslighting from CNN is unreal. I made a mistake last night. I flipped on Anderson Cooper for like 2 seconds, and he's out there talking about the gaslighting. They arrested these people from the Capitol riots, and all of them claimed that there was no Antifa there. Bullshit, right? Really? What about the guy from Utah that they arrested? What about the guy from Utah that they arrested though? He was clearly a Black Lives Matter anarchist guy, right?
They don't care, and the thing is, they can deny it, and all they want. And their peers don't watch it. Did you see Rand Paul?
But wait a minute, they're talking about us. But they're talking about the conservative side gaslighting when they're on there for 9 months, Mike. They were on there with pictures of buildings burning in the background with the caption that said mostly peaceful protest, fiery but peaceful. That's gaslighting. Fiery but peaceful.
And because their peers don't call them out ever, right? And the only one that's going to call them out is Fox News, and they all get together and say, "Oh, Fox News, don't even look at that. Don't worry about it. That's not true. That's not true." And the more they say it, the more people believe it, right?
Unreal. All right, let's move on to Mr. Cuomo because the love gov's going down. He is absolutely going down.
I want to see this video, by the way.
This video is sickening. I'll play this video for you. I'll play this right now. This video, we got to get your reaction.
Me yesterday, she said, "You wait till you see this video." I said, "You got to send it to me." She said, "I won't. I can't."
I never got to this.
Said not to.
I never got to this on Saturday. I wanted to get to this on Saturday, and I went to the website. I'm like, this has got to be a spoof. It's got to be a spoof. I went to the website, folks. I had Lily look at it as well. This looks legit to me. I think this company is actually trying to make a go of this. And when we say liberalism is a mental disorder, this is what we mean, okay?
Well, it's sickening. They're focused on Mr. Potato Head right now, Glenn.
That's right. They canceled Mr. Potato Head. He got uncanceled, by the way.
They canceled 6 books from Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, because he's a racist.
Seuss, because they discontinued these books because he's a racist. It's insensitive. Ridiculous. It's a joke. They're mentally ill.
Well, wait till you see this. You want to talk about mentally ill? So if you remember, we were out in California a couple of years ago in San Diego. We've been in San Francisco too, but San Diego on a top producers trip. And remember the back of a bus, I took a picture. It was all about, they had a big art exhibit on cannibalism. Literally, you go to the museum and it showed the different cuts of meat that you can get off a human body. Honest to God. Sickening. Gross. Sickening. This goes beyond. Ready? Here we go. Let me make this full screen because it's worth it. Hopefully this will play right. This is 45 seconds. Watch it to the end.
They don't want to feed a pig, but they want to feed each other.
honest to God.
That can't be real. That can't be real.
I'm telling you, dude, I went to the website. They got a whole website up. What they're trying to do is they're saying, send this tweet to your favorite celebrity, encourage them to donate their cells. These people
Celebrity
are
meats.
Sick. Yeah, celebrity meats. I should have read the caption for those listening online. So for those that are just listening and not watching it, you got to go to our YouTube video to see this, or go to our Twitter feed. Basically, celebrity meats is what the I think it's celebritymeats.org.
Cells from celebrity and turn it into salami. So you're basically eating human flesh.
That's right.
Or reproduced human flesh.
Disgusting, folks. This is where there's no bounds for these people now, right? So they passed the Equality Act, which basically destroys women's sports.
We don't stop them. We don't show up and stop them. Ever, ever, ever. Nobody fights back. Nobody fights back.
Yeah, right? Here's another one for you.
Nobody fights back.
This one is worth it, too. This is Rand Paul, by the way. And I'm going to get the videos. Now, look, this is
where we are, by the way. Biden picks her or him or whatever she wants to be called or he wants to be called, not because of any skill set, right?
No.
He's got a penis. So I'm going to say he.
Does he? Or she?
Well, that's. Yeah,
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it was a transgender person until like literally last week. I just thought it was the Health and Human Service person.
Right. And so now we're picking people because they can't figure out their sexuality, not because they're competent,
right?
Not because they actually know the skill set that needs to be done. It's because they fit the political agenda of what they're trying to do.
But the scary thing is that Rand Paul asked a very legitimate question. This goes along the lines of what I said on Saturday. Is how far is too far, right? They're talking about growing people's flesh into cells into flesh to be served to other people. It's sickening, right? Yeah. The UN wants us all to eat crickets too. That's the next thing that's coming.
Yeah, watch this one, because this is letting children change their sexuality at a very young age, right?
Well, this is letting parents abuse their children. I'm sorry. If you have a child that's 3 to 4 years old and you're talking to them about sexuality,
there's something wrong with you.
There's something wrong with you. Something wrong. Yeah. You should be talking to them about, look at the sky is blue, and teaching them about, how to be kind to other people, and
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, right? I mean, seriously.
Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. You can dress them up. It's okay, right?
Listen to this.
You don't talk about sexuality.
Rand Paul, now he's a doctor, so he's legitimately talking about stuff that he knows about. He got hammered by the left. How dare he's transphobic. Look at what Rand Paul is saying is, when you give hormone blockers to a child, you are half of these kids come back and look back and go, man, I regret ever doing that. I was a troubled youth. You're not helping troubled youth. You're feeding their troubledness, right? You're feeding their issues.
Some of these kids get into the wrong circles. They become manic depressive.
Exactly. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, a 14-year-old doesn't know what they're doing. No, Again, I said on the radio show Saturday, when I was 3 years old, I wanted to be Superman. My mom didn't tell me, here, take this towel, go climb up on the roof and jump off, see what happens, Glennie. Go ahead. Give it a go. Right. You could be anything you want, Glennie. She did say that. She said you could be an astronaut, but just don't jump off the roof. Don't do something stupid, right? She was there, as both my parents were, to protect us.
About genitality.
Of course not. Absolutely not. Ridiculousness. Here's the video from Rand Paul. Did a great job here. But did she get confirmed, or he, or whatever it is, that she, I guess, did she get confirmed? I don't know what happened here. But
I don't know that.
Anyway, this is the video that this is only a piece of this 5-minute grilling. He did a great job here.
Let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER. But you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off-label. I find it ironic that the left that went nuts over hydroxychloroquine being used possibly for COVID are not alarmed that these hormones are being used off-label. There's no long-term studies. We don't know what happens to them. We do know that there are dozens and dozens of people who've been through this who regret that this happened and a permanent change happened to them. And, if you've ever been around children, 14-year-olds can't make this decision. In the gender dysphoria clinic in England, 10% of the kids are between the ages of 3 and 10.
That's sick.
We should be outraged that someone's talking to a 3-year-old about changing their sex.
A 10-year-old. A 10-year-old. You don't talk to them about that at 10 years old.
10%. In Britain, they have created a gender dysphoria clinic for kids that that have confusion about their gender. Well, number one, if you have confusion about your gender, look at your underpants. It's just that simple. Now, it doesn't mean that maybe you were born in the wrong body. I get that there are people that have, issues that, they're born with both in certain cases, or maybe they just were born wrong. I get it, right? But you're now presenting stuff to kids that are already confused. It's tough enough to be a kid. It's tough enough to be a teenager. It's tough enough to figure out, your place in life and figure out all the hormones and all the stuff that you got going on as a kid. And now for adults to jump into the fray and say, oh, it's okay, little Billy, you might actually be Sally. What? What? Billy's going, what do you mean I might be Sally? What are you talking about? I got a bat and balls here. What's going on? What are you talking about? What? No, it's all, and some of these parents are literally like the case in Texas, right? We had a court case in Texas, folks. It's happening here too, right? Where the father had to sue because the mother's a lunatic, right? And they were divorced, and the mother was basically insisting on getting the son a sex change. And the son's like, I'm not really sure I want a sex change. She's like, yep, we're going to go and get the, what do they call it? A chop-a-dick off of me? Is that what that is, right? It's sickening.
No.
The kid was like 10 years old, folks. 10.
Even in that position to be able to think about that until you are an adult.
Let them make their own decisions.
On your own. Yeah.
Why don't we let kids smoke at 10 years old? Why don't we let kids go buy cigarettes?
I was just going to say that. Think about how crazy this is. You're talking about letting children change their sex parts at 10 or 11, but yet we send soldiers off to war, and they're not allowed to have a beer, a Miller Lite, and a cigarette. And right, if you're a soldier fighting for your life and our lives at 20 years old, you're not allowed to go have a Miller Lite. But if you want to change your sex parts, you can absolutely do that. It's mind blowing.
Kids don't have the ability to make these choices.
Totally crazy these people are. No, and shame on these parents, by the way. These parents should
exactly.
In jail.
You support your kids. You let them go through puberty. You see how things play out. And
if they're having issues with that. If they're having issues with that and they come to you, you have conversations about it. But you certainly don't say, hey, now's the time for a sex change.
You bring it
for a sex change, right?
Well, you wait until, you go through all the changes and you wait till you're, almost an adult, right? 17, 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right. Where they can
even
make their
at that point, I think you're still immature, right? I made some really stupid decisions at 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
None of them were, involved removing any body parts, thank God. But we definitely did stupid things, right? You're 20 years old. Like you don't sometimes think about the decisions you make and how they affect you for the rest of your life. But fortunately, nothing major happened of the stupid decisions. Like things like going boating without a life jacket. They take chances in life, right? But seriously, these kids, 10% between face tattoo, right? Between 3 and 10% of the kids in Britain, gender dysphoria clinics are between the ages of 3 and 10. That's outrageous, folks. That's outrageous. How far is too far for the left? I don't know. How far is too far for the left, right? They want to sex change 5 years old, feed you meat.
Sex changes at 3 years old and eating people. So
it's crazy.
I don't know.
All right.
I'll tell you what, though. Where does the right stand up and say enough of it? Enough is enough. The majority of people, by the way, I mean, when you talk about the transgender community, you're talking about 0.0002%, right? Yeah. I'm not saying we don't be sympathetic to some of those people, but to certainly change the rules on how we operate life is freaking beyond insane.
Well, you're destroying women's sports. You're destroying girls' sports for what? You're destroying half of the country, more than half, actually. I think it's 51% of the country is female or something close to that, right? So call it half, right? Half the country is female, right? You're going to take, to your point, 0.1% of the population and now allow them to compete in women's sports and destroy women's sports for the other, 150 million women in this country? I mean, seriously?
Right.
I mean, again, some of these girls worked their whole lives for this. It's terrible.
That's right.
It's terrible.
That's right. And by the way, girls' sports has been a bigger and bigger thing, right? Softball,
huge.
Lacrosse has been huge.
They fought for decades for the same rights, for God's sakes.
Men have different body parts, right? I mean, I love the fact that they're trying to push some of these women onto an NFL football field. Are you kidding me? Somebody's
here's some statistical facts, or not just statistics. Here's some actual facts.
Most men shouldn't be on an NFL football field, let alone women.
Well, here's some actual medical facts, all right? So women have smaller bone structures than men. It just is what it is, right? It's biology, right? So if you put a woman on a football field, they're way more likely to have bones broken than a man would, okay? Women have smaller muscle structures than men, right? Maybe not the East Germans. I get it. But most women in America have smaller muscle structures than men. That's just a biological fact. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's not fair I don't care if they're on hormone blockers. I don't care if they're on estrogen. I don't care. If you take a biological man with bigger bones, bigger body, and bigger muscles, and you put them in a contact sport or any sort of sport against women who don't have the same biological advantages, they're going to dominate that sport. And you have seen this everywhere. Wrestling, track and field, everywhere. And what you're doing is you're Title IX, right? All the work and effort from all these women's rights groups for years, for decades, to get girls the same ability to have the same opportunity to play a sport as boys did. Because guess what? For decades it was, well, if you're a girl, you get to go to home ec. You're a boy, you get to play football and get the scholarship. And they fought hard for that. And they won. Right. And they deserved to win. And now they have they had equal opportunities to have the same scholarships and the same careers and the same sports. And the Democrats, with one stroke of a pen and under the name of equity, just took it all away, basically, and said, now you're going to be able to do whatever.
The opposite to me is just as tragic, where they want these girls to play with men, right? And we did a show about this a long time ago. There was a wrestling, I think it was Lancaster, New York. They combined the women and the men's wrestling up if they wanted to. A woman could now wrestle. Or maybe they didn't have a women's wrestling team. There wasn't enough participation. So the girl is now going to wrestle with the men. The problem I have with that is if I have a son, I don't want him being accused of inappropriately touching her. I've watched wrestling matches. You're grabbing every body part. That's the way it works. You put my son, I don't have a son, but you put my son in a very uncomfortable situation.
That's true.
To be able to do what he likes to do. You want women wrestling? Great. Go out and get a women's team, right? And if it's a small, build it from the ground up, right? Wrestle Lancaster versus Pew and Frontier versus whatever. And if you need to combine schools to do that, you do it. You don't put a boy and a girl on a wrestling mat together. You just don't do it.
I think the difference,
first of all the points that you talked about with bone structure, all that, number one, number two. Number three, it puts my child in a very uncomfortable situation. If my son has been wrestling forever, trying to go get that scholarship, trying to do what they want to do to get to the next level, and then now you're forcing my son to possibly touch a
But at least he's going to win.
At
least he's going to win. I mean, at least he's going to win. He's going to dominate that sport. He's going to win. If it's the opposite, though, if it's a guy who now identifies as a girl and he joins the girls' wrestling team, he is going to wipe, and it's happened, folks. He's going to wipe out everybody else in competition, and it's happened, right? You have now men who are people who claim that they're women, who are biological men, who are now the track and meet stars in places like Massachusetts. And that's just, again, it's sad. You have taken all the work that women did to for equality, and you basically flush it down the toilet for 0.1%. I want you to understand that, folks. I'm all for protecting the minority classes. That's why we have a representative republic, not a democracy, right? A democracy is mob rule, right? We don't have mob rule for a reason. Our founding fathers were geniuses. It's meant to protect those minority groups of people, whether they're Asians, whether they're transgender, whether they're gay, or whether they're Latino. It doesn't matter, right? The whole idea of a representative republic is to have different representation. But when you start to hurt and negatively impact 99% of the population to benefit you're not hurting 1% of the population by saying just go use the gender neutral bathroom, but you are hurting the other 99 people in the women's locker room when the boy goes in there. Right?
Yep.
And we don't think like that. For Democrats' minds, it's all about bringing things down to the lowest common denominator. If there was one person in the country that needed something, everybody else has to bend over backwards for that one person. It's ridiculous.
Just like they never think about. They always think about things in very direct terms, right? Okay, well, this if we can help this 0.1%, nothing else changes around them, right? Just like COVID. They spent the last year and a half trying to focus on saving people from a flu, that had a 99.999% chance of survival if you didn't have pre-existing conditions, right? But they forgot all about all the other stuff, right? Now, I sent an article the other day to the group, drug deaths in general were up like 30-something%.
They doubled in Western Europe. They doubled. No, Polansky came out this week and said overdose deaths have doubled.
Mark had a whole thing on, don't do cocaine. The cocaine could be bad, right? Like, come on, Mark, you're not. Are you know none of this? First of all, he's blaming the cocaine. That's what he was blaming, right?
Yes.
He wasn't blaming.
It might be bad cocaine.
That people have been stuffed in their house for a year. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their livelihoods. They've lost some of these kids who were training for their senior year for football or basketball. All that stuff's been wiped out. And we said a year and a month or two ago, watch and see the deaths from drug overdoses go way up because of the way they're reacting to COVID. Yet they still can't admit to it. That's what these liberals do. They will double down. They'll triple down. You could watch the drug deaths go up by 400%, and they would not blink an eye and think that it's not correlated in some way, shape, or form to COVID, right? It's just sad. That's what they do. That's what they do. And they'll double down. They'll triple down. And unlike conservatives, they will continue to grind and grind and grind until they get what they want, right? Us conservatives, what do? We get into office and we negotiate.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You want this? Okay. No problem. Okay.
Yeah.
You want another $1 trillion? Okay.
I'll tell you. And then let me tell you what happens when you negotiate. The piece of crap tax legislation that came out under Trump, right? Yep. It was about 10% of that was good. That was the corporate tax cuts. Everything else was crap. Yep. Everything else was crap. They made it. Remember,
and it expires.
They were going to run on a tax. The platform was we were going to make tax returns so simple you could do them on a postcard. We were going to drop the rates. I mean, this is not rocket science. Drop the rates way down. We talk about the Laffer curve quite a bit. You want to have top tax rates at about 25%. There's been study after study that shows that you're not disincentivizing people if you're at 25%. When you get to 35 and 45% of losing their money, they say, I'm not going to open up that other restaurant. I'm not going to open up that other hardware store. It's just not worth it for me if I'm losing half my money, right? We know where the rates need to be. Put them there, make it simple, stop all the crap, and and make it simple. No reason why in the first 2 years of Trump's office that wasn't done. Instead, they complicated things. They took away these tax deductions. Yep. I bought a house. I bought a second house down in Florida. Now, we travel quite a bit, but the number one reason I bought that house was for the tax deduction. I said, I'm losing my money anyways. I'm traveling back and forth quite a bit. They took my tax deduction away. That was the big tax cut. I didn't get that.
That's right. Yeah, for those that say, well, it benefited the wealthy, it went all to the top, and it didn't benefit anybody else.
It didn't.
No, it didn't.
It did. What it did, benefited the poor and the middle class, the lower middle class.
What it did is it actually it hurt the people that have live in liberal states, right? I mean, it hurt the people who lived in blue states who for decades have not been able to manage their own budgets, that have double-digit tax rates in all kinds of cases. I mean, you look at the difference between New York and Florida and California, right? California is now 13% highest marginal tax bracket for state income tax.
Crazy.
New York is at over 8, right, or somewhere in that range, right? You have the even sales tax, right? I'm not sure what the sales tax in California is. In West Palm Beach, the sales tax is like 6%, something like that. In New York, it's 8 3/4, right? So almost 9%. Yep. So you're 50% higher. That 3/4 of a point, though, that's temporary. That's going away. It's anytime.
Oh yeah.
Anytime it'll be going away, right? There's
like
nothing temporary. Yeah, like the tolls. Those are going away too. You had to fight to sue them. It's ridiculous. So speaking of tolls, let's talk about Governor Cuomo. He is going down. He's finished. He's done. He's done. Governor Cuomo, for once, I feel like this is almost like watching the USSR crumble. Like I feel like I'm back in the late '80s watching Ronald Reagan deliver his speech in front of the Berlin Wall. Right?
You are way more optimistic than
no. He's done. He's absolutely done. I'll tell you why he's done. Let me tell you why he's done. Because he's no longer has of any use to the Democrat Party anymore. His usefulness has served its time. Right? So for a long time there, when this allegation originally came out in September, he was useful back then. Right? He was the opposite of Governor Cuomo or President Trump, right? Governor Cuomo was the hero, and he was the bludgeon by which they were beating up President Trump. See,
he was
how
winning
great.
Emmys. He
right?
was winning Emmys.
He was winning Emmys. Look at how great. So the media and the liberals needed Governor Cuomo because he was the answer to President Trump. But they don't need Governor Cuomo anymore, right? Governor
That's
Cuomo
true.
now has embarrassed them. And now you're seeing prominent Democrats. Well, not Kristen Gillibrand. She's really not prominent. But, she believes all women except if they're,
Well, here's my favorite, though.
But Pelosi's against him now. Pelosi's against him.
If this was a Republican, they would have said, darn it. They would have, first of all, they would have circled his house. His house would probably be on fire if he was a Republican, right? And they would have demanded his resignation. Demanded. No chance to try to redeem yourself or to try to explain yourself. If this was a Republican, he would have already been gone out of office, right?
Yep.
But he's a Democrat. So now what they're saying is, well, you know what? You should have a fair trial. We should be able to look at this and try to research it and see what happened. Right?
Go for it.
Now he's appointing, by the way, but he goes, I want to appoint my own people.
Yeah, I'm gonna. See what I've done. I've appointed my buddy over here who's going to be the special independent prosecutor. Is going to look into me. Okay, Lolita James says shut that down. Unfortunately, but
I absolutely 1,000% want to believe what you're saying, that he's done.
He's done.
I won't believe it. It's like, you remember Wizard of Oz when they wouldn't believe it until they actually saw that the witch was dead, right?
Yeah.
I just can't in the back of my brain think that the witch is dead until I actually see that he's dead.
He's gone. He's gone because when the party leadership like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton have both come out and said, whoa, wait a minute now. They have spoken out against Governor Cuomo, and they're saying he needs to have an investigation. When you lose that support, because otherwise Hillary Clinton would have said anything, right? He would have said nothing. Right? Nancy Pelosi could have said nothing, right? Jen Psaki was asked about, what's Biden's position? Well, he's always made clear, believe all women. Well, except Tara Reid. But other than that, right? It's a joke.
Even Andrew, by the way. Andrew came out, remember when it was Christine Blasey Ford?
Yep.
And he said, we have to believe her.
Yes,
we have to believe her.
Yeah. Her story was ridiculous. The three witnesses she claimed that were there all denied any knowledge of it at all. I mean, it was a psychotic episode she had. I believe something may have happened to her. It didn't happen with Brett Kavanaugh.
No.
I'm not sure it actually happened at all, but I'm telling you what, that woman needs some serious psychological counseling.
She's got a nice retirement account somewhere from the Democrat Party.
For sure she does.
That way. I absolutely believe that she was paid big sums of money to do what she did, right?
Absolutely.
It was pretty obvious that she was lying about it. Everybody with a brain in their head knew it, right? But not Andrew Cuomo. Andrew said we got to believe her.
But here's what's happened this week to Andy. So he started the week.
He was hoping, by the way, he was hoping that the nursing home stuff was just going bye-bye, right?
Yep.
He got exactly what he wanted, which was another corrupt agency, the FBI, who was going to come in and sort of say, everything's okay.
Right.
We went through all the books.
Nothing to see here.
He did the best he could, right? If you heard Andrew a million times, he said, well, we didn't intentionally hurt anybody on purpose. Well, you're pretty incompetent. I mean, two guys, I continue to say this, two guys out of Buffalo, New York, from the day we saw that letter, we said this can't be true. Right. Nobody could be this incompetent. Yep. Nobody could, especially after what he did with the ventilators, which is hoard them, and nobody ended up using them. And he was called out by the president. The president said, you have plenty of equipment. You're hoarding it. Oh, yeah, I am. In a million years, I can't imagine he would be this stupid to do what he did with nursing homes. But it was. It was true. It was true.
Well, beginning of the week, he had one accuser. Then he had a second accuser. Now, the first accuser, he said, she's a liar, right? That's what he said. He basically said, she's lying, right? The second accuser came out. He said the same thing. She's lying, too. And then the third accuser came out, and Sunday, he issues an admission. Some people call it an apology. I call it an admission. Well, if I acted inappropriately, I made people feel uncomfortable. That was not my intent.
It was like the nursing home, though. If you listen to his apology, it was more like, they got it wrong, and I'm sorry for them, and I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, I created an information vacuum that allowed you to get the wrong impression of me.
Right.
That's what I apologize for letting you get the wrong impression of me. I should have beat you down earlier, right? I should have called out the price earlier.
It was identical to the nursing home, Glenn. Identical to the nursing home. Identical.
Well, but see, that's an admission, though. See, that's where he's finished now, because now he's done a couple of things. He's admitted to the misconduct that he initially said was a lie, right? So which is it? Are they out and out lying, or is there truth to that? And now you're apologizing for what you say might have been perceived. Really, a kiss on the lips, right? Unwanted is not. You misunderstood a sexual innuendo or a comment, right? Yeah. Which, by the way, in the workplace, there's no place for it.
Misunderstood might be, hey, you know what? Why don't you join us all for lunch? And she took that the wrong
Misunderstood
way.
is, hey, we're going out for drinks after work. Why don't you come out with us and have some drinks? Oh, he made a pass and he asked me out on a date. That's misunderstood. Yeah. Not misunderstood is, how would you feel about playing strip poker? How do you feel about sleeping with older men? Like, what are you talking about? That's not misunderstood. It's none of your business. No. You don't ask these types of questions. Totally unprofessional. But he's admitted it now. He's done. Yeah. He's done. I'm telling you. He's admitted it now. The last one's a reporter. You're going to have, by the end of the week, Mike, you'll have 5 more women. I guarantee it. There'll be at least 8 by the end of this week, and by the end of next week, by the end of March, I think the outcry will be so overwhelming, and then he'll go out and he'll blame everybody else. So that's exactly what he'll do.
He'll have a TV show with his brother, is what he'll do.
For sure. He'll end up on CNN. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
He'll end up on CNN.
More book deals. Right. $10 million book deal right out of the gate.
I'm going to say this the wrong way. I don't hope that any other women were violated. I do hope, however, that if they were, they come out with a strong presence and say enough is enough.
They will.
He's a bully. He's a bully. You listen to what he said to, what was his name?
Ron Kim? Ron Kim, the assemblyman downstate.
I mean, we all knew, by the way, we this. We've been saying this for years, that he's a bully. He pushes through.
Look at the restaurants.
He rides around on his private jets. He pisses away all kinds of taxpayer money. He doesn't care. He's very arrogant.
He's petty.
That his whole story, by the way, from that lady that was at a wedding and he's grabbing her face. I can see that just from his demeanor and the way he has acted to the taxpayers over the last bunch of years, not giving 2 craps. This is, I'm going to get what I want. I'm the great Andrew Cuomo. How dare you not?
Well, now photos and videos are coming out. So now there's photos and videos of him either saying inappropriate things or inappropriately touching people, or he's done.
We got to redo our sexual harassment video.
I know. Again,
which is aggravating.
We said this, by the way, 2 years ago when he passed this. We did a whole sexual harassment video that used all the politicians, mainly in New York, but we picked some other ones like Harvey Weinstein and others. But New York,
we got to release that.
We got to release that. We got to put that up on our. We got to re-release the sexual harassment. We have to do some updates to that this summer. We got some time. Summer gets a little bit slower. People are enjoying the outdoors in Western New York, so we get a little bit of free time when we can actually go and do some production stuff. So we'll have to do some updated videos. But I think Mike, it makes sense now. You can we called it out right from the get-go that he was petty and vindictive, and people are like, no, that's just a coincidence. Really, it's a coincidence that a restaurant comes up with a very creative menu that spells out F Como, right? It's French fries and whatever, right? And the next day, the liquor authority shows up, right? It's just coincidence that Arrowhead Golf Club filed lawsuits and won an injunction for them to allow to have a wedding party, and the liquor authority shows up the next day or the day of and strips them of their liquor license, right? Santora's on Fox Business,
News,
right?
Explaining Fox Business, explaining their lawsuit and how they're doing this to survive, and miraculously, just a few hours later, the liquor authority shows up. I can't help but think part of that, though, is these minions, like we were talking about with Polansky, that just want to do it to get on his good side. Oh, look at what I did, boss. Look at what I did.
Yep, no doubt. It's just ridiculous.
All right, we'll wrap this up.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us, folks.
We'll
I mean, we could do so much more about Cuomo.
I pray he's gone because I do think he had a war chest. And the tough part about beating him was he had $100 million behind him when it comes to a campaign. Whether it's Letitia James or whoever else is going to step up, they're not going to have the war chest that he has.
No.
You just got to hope that some conservative somewhere out there steps up with money. You got to have big money. We've had people say, oh, Mike and Glenn, you should run. You got to have millions and millions of dollars. And I'll tell you what hurts guys like us is there's a whole track record of us talking for the last 20 years, right? So they'll take that out of context. You have to have somebody almost like a Trump. Trump came in out of nowhere and said, I'm new. Obama was like that, right? Not a lot of material on Obama, right? Yeah. So he was able to win.
Well, and what there was, they hit.
I'm not saying we've done anything wrong, and I would not ever back down from anything we said. However, the left is they're such dirtbags that when you have people that have been, Rush always said this. He says it doesn't translate to elections because they've got so much stuff that they can take out of context that it's hard to beat that, right? When you've got 247 and using that as a local an example against you, and they've got material that they can take out of context day in and day out, it's tough to beat that, right? So you got to get a conservative, somebody who's got tons of money, he's got likability, and I just pray that the state gets it because, man,
I don't think
it's so sad to see it go down.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying we're going to get a Republican. I don't think so. I think we'll get another Democrat. We'll get a Kathy Hochul, who I imagine will be a lot like Mayor Bloomberg, right? You can't drink this. No more big sodas. No more French fries. No styrofoam containers. We'll get Bloomberg across the state, and then who knows? But we will get another Democrat. I don't see a Republican stepping up. The thing with Cuomo, though, Mike, and I think what the key thing with him is that he's not liked. He's not liked, right? He was there because, like you said, he had $100 million in his war chest. He had power, and that power helped other Democrats get power. But, they don't. The Democrats have full power now. The Democrats have the legislature. The Democrats have the Assembly and the Senate. They got it all. And the redistricting, right? So what use is Andrew Cuomo anymore? He has soiled himself, basically, publicly, right? So what use is Andrew anymore? He's of no use. And so if you're not useful and you're not likable, you go bye-bye. And that's Mr. Andrew Cuomo. You can say bye-bye to King Andy because he is gone by the end of the first quarter in my mind. I think the groundswell will continue. I think it'll get louder and louder. I think you'll have more people that will step up. And when leadership in the party like Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi start calling you out, you know your time is done. I think he'll get more erratic. I think he'll get more nasty because that's what these people do. I think he'll lash out more. I think he'll get more aggressive. I think he'll lash out more. And I think that he will make himself look absolutely ridiculous to a point where the party leadership finally steps up and says, you got to go. And when that happens, he'll have no more. He's got no more support. He's finished.
If he doesn't, can you imagine how much of a bully he's going to turn into?
If he doesn't go, well, that's the thing, right? Ugly, so if you don't dethrone the king, if you don't, if you don't behead the king, and I'm meaning this metaphorically, don't show up my house, FBI. If you don't dethrone and behead the king, then you can expect to be beheaded yourself. Seriously. If you don't get rid of Andy at this point, people like Ron Kim, your career is over, man. You reporters that have spoken out, your careers are over. So at this point, once you storm the castle, you have to go all the way.
Already been hiding.
Jimmy's already hiding. Yeah, Jimmy, where's my sound effect? Jimmy's already. Where is he?
Jimmy's never done another interview ever.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Jimmy.
There he is. I'll tell you what, Jimmy. I love that. Wait.
And I'll tell you what, Jimmy.
I don't think I've seen Jimmy since then.
No, I haven't seen Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy's in hiding. No. Jimmy is
where did Jimmy go?
It's a lot like the Chinese Communist Party. Like Jack Ma started speaking out. Hey, the communist's not right. Gone. Bye-bye. He's gone, right? Jack Ma, a billionaire, by the way. Jack Ma, one of the wealthiest people on the planet, is probably sitting in a Chinese gulag somewhere, right? Nobody has any idea. Yeah, he's been seen once since October in a video that looks like it was made by Al-Qaeda. I mean, seriously, everything is okay. I'm happy here in mainland China, getting a lot of here. Golfing in recently. Nothing to see here. I'll see you in about a year. Very healthy. Yes, exactly, right? That's exactly where the sign says this, right? It's just one of these, like, I'm okay, please. Don't worry about me, right? That's Jack Ma right now with a big explanation point. Yeah, SOS, right? But anyway, that's what Andy will do. Right. So if you don't get rid of Andy, then all of a sudden, Jimmy, you'll never see Jimmy again. Anyway, all right, folks, look, if you need to throw out the weeks.
The good news is the local support, like Polansky, are not showing up to ask him to get out of office. So
no, Polansky, he's just there going,
Mark, you'll be good.
Who's next? Whose butt do I have to kiss next? That's what Mark is wondering. Yeah. He's already on the phone. He's already sending flowers to Kathy Hochul. He's already going to get ahead of the game. Letitia, exactly.
James,
Anyway, all right, well, that's going to do it for us, folks. Again, thanks again for listening, and we do appreciate it. If you like what you heard, if you're listening on the podcast version, give us a positive review and share us. I guess you can just share this and link it up with other people or send it off like a text message or something. But I don't know. What do I know, right? I've done it like once. It's actually worked. But yeah, do us a favor. Share this. We appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you again. Your support means a lot to us. Your comments mean a lot to us too, especially the funny ones. We appreciate those. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to hear more of this type of content. Again, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tune in on Saturdays from 1 to 3, where we've been on for 20 some odd years hosting the Financial Guys radio show. Thanks again on behalf of Mike Lomas. I'm Glenn Wiggle. Don't forget to go to our website for all the stuff that we do at thefinancialguys.com. We will see you on Saturday on the Financial Guys Radio Network.